You can do our intro?
Sure. Welcome to My Dietitian Journey. I'm Felicia, owner and registered dietitian at Paraz Nutrition and My Dietitian Journey.
I'm Adam, producer, guy doing with the knobs on the mixer. That is not in the shot. What are we talking about today?
We are going to talk about why you should consider starting a private practice.
That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You have a private practice.
I do.
Paraz Nutrition.
Yes.
That is your private practice.
That is.
How long have you been in private practice?
Technically since 2014 I started it, but I really didn't start it until like 2015. I had a website in 2014.
Well, that counts. All right. Well, we have to start with what a private practice even is then.
Yeah. So basically a private practice is one that it's a professional business, but it's not controlled for or paid for by a government or a large hospital system. So it's wholly owned by you, the individual, not by some other entity. So again, like a hospital or a government agency.
Before you started a private practice, I had only heard of doctors starting a private practice. Why is it called a private practice and not like a small business or something?
To be honest, some people actually use those terms interchangeably, or they'll say I'm a small business owner.
Well, you are, but it's kind of like, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle's not a square.
Yeah, like with the private practice, that's more kind of service-based. So sometimes people, when they talk about a business, they're talking about like selling products, but also maybe services, versus like private practice, you are practicing a certain expertise. So like practicing nutrition.
So it's a practice.
Yeah.
So like, a dentist.
Yes,
or
yes.
a chiropractor, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Great. You're not a chiropractor.
No.
You're a real healthcare professional. I just took a shot at chiropractors.
I was just going to say you just
That's
took a
fine.
stab
So,
at-
but you could do, you do products, don't you?
Yeah, and that's one of the really cool things about private practice as a whole is you can really do like anything what you want. So I do have products. I have I sell lesson plans. I sell hats, like
Well, is
hats.
that part of your business?
It's all kind of lumped together because it's kind of all lumped together.
So if you have a private practice, there's a lot you can do. It's kind of an umbrella for whatever you do professionally, for whatever you offer.
Yeah, so you can do, and a lot of people go into private practice initially and they do a lot of service-based things. So they do one-on-one sessions with clients. They might do group sessions. So they might do, whether it's like group coaching or group classes, like support groups for nutrition, or like health and wellness groups, or if someone specializes in diabetes, they might, have a diabetes support group, and that would be in addition to seeing clients one-on-one. So there's a lot of opportunity in different ways that you can kind of grow and create a practice, basically.
When you said diabetes, I thought about Wilford Brimley. Rest in peace.
Oh.
The guy who was on the commercials with the mustache, diabetes.
Oh,
Everyone
him?
knows but you.
I didn't know that was his
Yeah.
name.
So how do you make money when you do this? I guess aside from people just paying out of pocket.
Yeah, so there's the option of, having people self-pay for your services, so paying out of pocket, which again could be for anything nutrition related. It could be products, that you might sell. Maybe you sell meal plans, or maybe you might want to sell, like a workshop about healthy eating. But then there's also the aspect of, becoming an insurance provider. So you would actually accept payment from the insurance company. So the client wouldn't pay you directly unless they had a copay, but the insurance would be paying you directly.
About how many clients pay via insurance? Like, is there a ratio for you that you've noticed? Is it mostly insurance for your clients?
Yeah, for me, it's like about probably 80% of my clients are insurance based. And then in terms of one-on-one, actually, I should say about 80 to 90% of my clients are insurance based for one-on-one services. And then I have clients who pay for additional things that wouldn't be covered by insurance, like the aspect of like coaching. So I have like monthly coaching that I have with some clients where we check in through phone, email, text, and those things wouldn't be covered with their insurance. It's outside of, the actual counseling sessions, but about 80%.
So how exactly do you get clients? You set up your business, you register as a provider with your private practice. to insurance companies, and then what do they do?
Yeah. So once you're on the panels for insurance companies, which is a process, and we'll definitely have a separate podcast for that because there's a lot involved with how to go about accepting insurance and whatnot. But in terms of getting clients, so some of my client referrals are actually, they just search for me on the website. So the same way that they would search for a doctor, they would search for a dietitian in their area.
On their health insurance provider's website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they'll go to their health insurance provider website, search for someone in their area, and then I show up. And then some people just kind of call around. So that tends to be some of my referrals. And then partnering with other companies or private practices. So there's a couple of primary care physician offices that I work with where they just send me clients. So I'm kind of like a dietitian that they have on their list with different specialties. And so when they have a client that's interested in, counseling or they feel would be a good fit, they would send a referral to me. And so that's another way, is kind of direct referrals from, primary care physician offices.
Do insurance companies themselves actually funnel people to you directly in any way?
It depends. So sometimes when you call an insurance company and ask for a provider, they'll just send you a list. They don't say, you should see this provider or that provider. They kind of more so facilitate, and then you're kind of left to decide which ones. I don't think they can really ethically say, choose this provider over another.
So they present options to someone of the insurance company. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. So, all right. So that's how you make money, and that's what you kind of do. So you do primarily one-on-one counseling, I guess, is your main focus for your practice?
Yeah, it's a little bit more, it's probably at this point, I would say like 70% of my practice is one-on-one client sessions. And then I have, the aspect of like group fitness, because I'm a personal trainer. So I do online fitness stuff, and I used to do in-home personal training before, but then I also do a lot of presentations, so like webinars. I was doing face-to-face seminars, but now a lot of stuff is virtual, so I've been doing more webinars, which is another source of income as well. But
so when you say you've been doing webinars, you're presenting?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So
it's like a speaking engagement, but like online, because
Yep. Yeah. So I work with a couple of other companies where I may actually get referrals from them for one-on-one clients, but they'll reach out to me at different times of the year to do presentations for their employees. And then that's another way that I can get some income. Speaking
engagements. Mm-hmm. I guess there are probably opportunities for some writing too. I don't know if you've really done that.
Yeah, I don't do a lot with writing, but there's quite a few dietitians that I know that work, that blog for certain food companies, or they partner with food companies where they have like a sponsored post on like social media, and then they might follow it up with like a recipe, or they'll do like a sponsored cooking demo and do it live on their social media channels. So there's definitely a ton of opportunity for partnering with other organizations, but still, being your own private practice and kind of doing contract work.
Okay, so we've kind of defined a private practice and what it is. We've talked about what you can do with your private practice. Lots of options, a lot of different ways you can go about earning some income here. But why should you start a private practice? Or why would you want to work in a private practice as opposed to a traditional job? Like, what are the, like, for you, I guess, but in general, what are the main benefits to having a practice versus traditional employment?
Yeah, so the two biggest things are like autonomy. It's like being able to just do your own thing. Like you can, create your own.
Not working for the man.
Not working for somebody, but you can just do whatever you want. Essentially,
be your own boss.
You are your own boss.
Work from home.
That's another pro is, a lot of people are working from home now, but
how to make $1 million.
Being able to work from home, work in your pajamas, depending on how you run your business, I
may or may not be in my pajamas right now.
That's true.
You don't know that. You can't judge me. Maybe my pants have puppies on them.
Maybe. But the flexibility too, which is actually, that was one of the key things for me, being able to create your own schedule when you see clients, when you don't see clients, when you take opportunities and you can kind of create your own day. I like to do things earlier in the morning, and I don't like working super late at night. So I only have like 2 late nights a week. So having that flexibility, you have that. You're not forced into a 9-to-5 job. You can create your own hours, create what your day might look like.
You are the arbiter of your own destiny. You create your own schedule. Well, I guess you're sort of beholden to the typical daytime hours that people are awake doing things. You have a lot of what you do is directly related to like other people being awake. I mean, it's not like you can just work at 4 a.m. You're going to be pretty stuck for things to do at that point.
Yeah.
And I guess you're back and forth between people, insurance companies. I guess you're somewhat beholden to business hours typically.
Yeah, there's definitely some stuff, and that's kind of where I tend to like chunk certain parts of my week with different tasks, because then I'm not kind of spending a lot of time on the phone all the time. But that's absolutely, you're still kind of bound by, the 9 to 5 in a sense of when you might be able to do things, but that could be like your Monday or your Friday, and then or Monday and Thursday, and then your Friday could be like an off day, kind of thing. But again, having the flexibility to really choose the days that you work, when you might see clients, what partnerships you have too. That was something that was really huge for me, was kind of deciding who I wanted to work with and how I wanted to specialize and what focus I wanted to be in, and not just having to see everybody, but, kind of pour more people who aligned with, my message. So
with your private practice, I would say, so we're talking about like sort of the pros here of running a private practice and that being what you do for, some income. Well, I would say probably one of the benefits is that as a dietitian, you seem to have a lot of avenues available to you for like ways of making money.
Yeah.
Because when you have a private practice, and I think I was kind of, I trashed chiropractors a little bit, but they are a healthcare professional that does have a practice. And, I don't know if it's common to go into a chiropractor's office. Maybe this is not a great example because they sell stuff. Usually they have like their own brand of like multivitamin or something. But as a dietitian, it seems like you're sort of in a unique position to be able to do a lot of different things to create income, to generate income streams. Is that, would you say, more so than some other?
Absolutely. And that's one of the nice things about private practice is you have so many ways that you can essentially run a business.
So many ways that you can monetize.
Yeah. And so some people, I know a lot of dietitians who actually don't really like doing the one-on-one aspect. They would so much rather do presentations and sell services, or they don't necessarily do the one-on-one client stuff where they're using their dietitian expertise, but they might work with other dietitians, or they might work with other healthcare professionals designing programs specific to doctors or to gyms and things like that. So there's so many opportunities, which is nice, but then there's also the flexibility, and you're able to be creative and not, have to run through 6 layers above you to get something approved to be able to do it.
So you can make stuff and sell it.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You have like a cart, like a shop on your site, don't you? Something?
Yeah. So I use a couple of platforms that link to my website where they check out. But yeah, there's so many options with having like a shopping cart on your website, or like a cheaper route sometimes with getting started is kind of like hooking up with another platform and then embedding it on your website too.
So you have a website.
Oh yes.
For your business. And you LLC'd recently.
Yes.
So these are all things that tie into having a private practice. I guess we're talking about why you'd want to have a private practice, to have your own website, to sell all your stuff on. Yeah. To offer your services on. And you offer like packages and stuff, don't you? This is not an advertisement for Felicia's website. This is for the benefit of anyone listening who's, an RD2B.
Yeah, and that's one of the nice thing about services and how you design your website and what you do. But some people sell like a la carte services, so they'll sell like individual sessions, and then some people sell packages. So I actually have both because I find that some clients want to just do a one-off session for something, and then other clients they want to invest in something that's a little bit more robust. So like some follow-ups. And then I also have a lumped in like training package because I do the personal training too. So,
not for anything, but as a dietitian, starting your own private practice, you're starting a business. It's not like starting a restaurant where 90% of small businesses fail in the first year. You don't really have that risk. If you start your private practice, you're sort of like saying, okay, here I am, insurance companies, approve me and then send me clients. Like the clients are supplied to you.
Yeah.
in a sense.
And there's definitely some, depending on your area, because I know that not every area is good in terms of insurance coverage, and so they may not get a lot of clients in that way. But
this depends on the state you're in. If you're in the United States, and things may vary. If you
Yeah.
are across the pond in the UK or perhaps in Canada, things are different depending on where you are in the world.
But that's also where, different products or services or group programs could be beneficial. So someone might not be interested in maybe able to pay for a one-on-one session with you, but they would maybe do a group program where the cost is lower for them, but it still allows you to make, a good amount of money, and you're also not necessarily creating a ton of different individual content because it's for a group. So there's definitely ways to kind of get around.
I still think you're underselling the whole private practice insurance thing, where like literally you are just given customers.
Yeah. And
you don't have to compete or attract customers.
No, and there's so many people to go around too. And that's a huge selling point, to be honest, when you're trying to partner with, different companies or organizations to kind of sell yourself in a sense, to say, they might pay you to do a webinar, but you can talk to them about the fact that, if their employees all take an insurance that you're a provider for, you can tout that and say, I also accept X insurance. And so you're also being able to, let them know that, to be aware that they have this. Because again, we've mentioned not a lot of people know that.
So maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like if you're a dietitian, there's almost no reason not to start a practice if you're interested in becoming self-employed, because all you need to do is, I don't want to downplay it because it was a lot of work to set up and everything like that. But if you're in a state where you can become a provider for insurance, you should definitely do that, because then those insurance companies will funnel clients to you.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and get them.
No. And that's a good point. And, one thing
that's a massive point. You're in a unique position there as a small business owner.
Yeah. And one thing I want to highlight with insurance is that it's a lot to get started and to figure out all the paperwork and everything you need to do with billing. But once you get there, the process is so much easier when you start to understand plans and how to bill and all that. So sometimes people don't go that route because it's a lot and it's overwhelming. But once you get, and we can again have a topic on this, but once you get into it and learn about it, which is a lot, it gets so much easier. Like I always tell people, when I first was trying to bill insurance, it took me like hours to figure out what everything was on the form and what I actually had to fill it out.
It took you several months to really get it down. I think it was it was a struggle for months. I remember you having to go back and forth with people on the phone, emails. It was kind of a mess for a long time.
Yeah, like I should clarify, it took me hours to fill out a claim form, and then it took me months to actually figure out how to get paid in the right way because I was doing it wrong.
The full process.
Yeah, so... But
there's no guidebook. You kind of pieced it together.
Yeah, like the Academy of Nutrition, which can be a resource, has a PDF download if you're a member for free on insurance credentialing and billing. But it gives you the basics, which I think is a good place to start. But if you are interested in becoming a provider, go to the individual insurance company websites, and they have resources in their provider section, which can kind of help you to get started. So those are helpful. But now it takes me literally like 5 seconds to submit a claim. So it is possible.
5 seconds. That's a speed running world record.
Click and it's done. So.
5 seconds. Well, I guess we're kind of segueing into the cons here a little bit.
Yeah.
So getting set up can be a massive hassle. It's kind of like climbing a mountain. You never know when you're going to, the top just looks so far away.
Yeah. Like figuring out how to start, like what you even need to start. That's a lot. And then just, there really isn't a comprehensive guidebook. There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of information about private practice isn't geared towards dietitians. Like more stuff is kind of getting created now by dietitians who are in private practice, but it's not as easily accessible or as robust as what others.
There's no YouTube video or PDF download where it's like a step-by-step. Do this, and then do this, and then do that, and then do this. And I imagine it differs depending on what state or country you're in, too. There's not one, global standard for this. There's not even one for the United States.
Yeah, and part of that issue, too, is the aspect of, licensure and how that's different across the different states. And so that that's often why you see a lot of roadblocks with like what the process is, because it's so different by state.
Yeah, you guys are all over the place with your licensure, because you have, like, in Pennsylvania, you have to have your license for here, and then what? Some states you just don't need like Jersey, you don't need a license.
They do now. Yeah, they
It's a
just
recent
passed
change?
a bill. I think it was last year. Mhm.
Bummer. I was going to go practice in Jersey where I don't need a license. So that's one of the cons, I guess, is just setting up and starting. And then there's a lot of other stuff too that you ran into, roadblocks and like things that you probably didn't see coming.
Yeah, like, I mean, one of the huge things for me that I didn't really notice, I guess, in the beginning was like the aspect of, it's isolating and lonely, which some people actually are experiencing now, not necessarily being in private practice, but, you don't have that. You're in a social setting with other coworkers and other dietitians, it's just you, but that means also everything falls on you. So like in the beginning, I was the one doing everything. I'm doing the billing, as I mentioned, I'm doing the client setup and doing the social media. And so it's like, it's a lot of hats to wear, especially because those kinds of things are not things that were taught in undergrad. I didn't have any business course in my undergrad, and my, master's was in dietetics administration, but it didn't deal with necessarily a lot with entrepreneurship. So.
Wasn't entrepreneurship. No.
Yeah.
I guess not. It's a lot of work, right? Yeah, that's the idea. And when you don't have a traditional job anymore, you may not realize it. It's easy to take for granted that when you go to work, you have a sort of inbuilt social network that if you stop going to that job, suddenly there's dozens or potentially hundreds of people that you were seeing every day that you just no longer see because you're now working from your home office, which could be your living room, whatever. And that is a problem. It may feel like a high quality problem to some people, and for other people that may be a dream come true, but it is something to consider and will have an impact on you one way or another, probably your mental health. How did you deal with that when you first got going?
So actually, when I first started, I was still doing a lot of face-to-face stuff. So I actually joined like a chamber of commerce. And so I went to like networking events, which was kind of like surface level social interaction. But getting into like different dietitian groups was really helpful. So doing like, I used to actually meet up virtually with a dietitian who was in another state every month. And so we would check in like, how's private practice going? And, I'd schedule coffee dates with people, like other dietitians or other people in my network, and just being able to have like, I would plan it into my schedule though, because
you were still working full time when you first started your practice. So we're not quite, I guess we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here going into that. So other cons, other downsides, you needed to get private health insurance when you left your job.
Yeah, so that's a huge thing too. And like one thing that's nice about private practice, like we mentioned, you can kind of just start in a sense. There really isn't a lot of overhead, so you can see clients virtually and do a lot of different stuff. You don't necessarily have to get a physical office space, but there's the things that you don't think of, like health insurance, that your employer would cover. And so getting your own plan if you're not on like a spouse's plan or so that's a huge cost. And
we kind of glossed over there being really no overhead as a pro.
Oh yeah,
you don't really need much in terms of technical stuff to get started.
No,
and you had a Chromebook when you first really got going.
I did. I had a Chromebook, and I worked off of that for a while. And I wanted something that was like easily portable, but and even before, like I have an electronic record system now, but like before I used to do like encrypted flash drives and like Word docs, so you can paper files. So there's definitely like low cost ways of setting yourself up for private practice to kind of reduce some of those costs. But
yeah, it's a very cheap business to start.
Yeah, especially
you don't need to rent a building and buy equipment.
No, and some people do get office space, but I mean, you really don't necessarily need to, depending on, again, kind of what you're going to end up doing with the practice too. But
so other downsides, I mean, there's no quote unquote guarantee of income, I guess.
Yeah, especially when you first start, and again, we mentioned becoming an insurance provider that can help with referrals, but you don't necessarily instantly get paid. And one, you might not get a lot of referrals right away. You might get them at different peaks of the year. Like I tend to get a lot of referrals in like January. And so that tends to be like, I have like ebb and flow with it, but you're not guaranteed income. You kind of have to you're not going to clock in and have like a...
Well, you got to go get it.
Yeah, you got to go get it.
You're responsible for getting that income. You don't just have a company that says, all right, here's your work for the day and we'll pay you.
Yeah. And
it's all you.
Exactly. And if like a claim got denied, and then a client doesn't pay, it's, I'm eating the costs, so that's...
Well, how often out of pocket? I mean...
That happened in the very beginning when I first started, when I was like not really sure how to bill insurance companies, and didn't have the right paperwork set up where it was kind of my not understanding a lot. But now that's really not a concern right now. But that's just something.
Say, how does someone duck the cost if it's covered for their insurance? You weren't able to charge somebody who paid out of pocket, I guess.
Yeah. So I thought their insurance covered it, had the session, and then after realized that it was not covered, but I also didn't have the correct paperwork signed for them to say that they accepted to pay out of pocket if their insurance didn't cover it. And so I tried to get payment, but that just didn't happen. But I couldn't really enforce it because I just didn't.
Well, so that's another con. You really have to go about doing all this stuff. You don't have like an HR department or like a collections or whatever behind you. There's a lot there that you have to do for yourself.
Yeah.
Hence the no guarantees of income point there.
And then there's also the aspect of, you may work more than 40 hours a week. Some people go into private practice solely because they want to work less and, still earn the money. But, sometimes you might be working more, especially in the beginning stages of trying to figure out everything and set it all up. So that can be definitely... you might find yourself working more than 40 hours if you let yourself to, so.
Yeah, that's up to you. You kind of have to control yourself and your hours and whatnot. Yeah, actually, I think one of the big things too is kind of knowing what you're worth and gauging the value of your time. That was something that I remember you struggling a bit with, depending on, when you were kind of newer to it, you accepted work that you would not accept today.
Yeah.
You were doing cooking classes for a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah. They were really, and I always look at those things as, they were really great learning opportunities, and I learned a lot about myself, and they were fun to do, like cooking classes. But I also realized I was so underpaid, and I was also kind of afraid of letting the contract go. And, but moving forward, I did eventually let it go because it wasn't worth.
Things are going to come your way. You're going to have to determine whether or not it's worth your time. You're going to have to figure out a value for your hours and, really make that decision. At some point, you're probably going to turn down work, and that's going to be a struggle because on one hand, a lot of people are probably going to be in a position where they think it's a privilege, and it is, I guess, to be able to go into your own private practice, and the fact that you get work, you should feel lucky and whatnot. But if it comes to a point where, it's not worth your time, you have to make that decision, and that can be a hard call to make.
Yeah. And that's really hard too. And that's one of, again, the downsides, which is why you really want to try and build a network. How to know when you should turn down something. You don't, if you're working for yourself and by yourself, it's like you don't have someone else to bounce the ideas off of, or go ask your manager or your boss, should I do this, or how do I do this? It's okay, how do I nicely end a contract? What do I say, or should I, and so you're making those big decisions yourself.
It's all you.
Yeah, it all comes down to you.
All right. So, we talked about the pros and cons here a little bit. Would you say this is for just anyone to do? Do you have to have a certain temperament to do this? Is there a type of person who would maybe want to not consider private practice? Yeah,
so not necessarily for everybody. You definitely need to be organized and be someone who is able to be on top of themselves, accountable to yourself, and also able to, work to self-imposed deadlines, to say the least, that you are creating the schedule. You are the one in charge. So if you find that that's not your strong suit, and those are things that some people want to go into private practice, but they find, well, I'm not super organized, or I'm not really good at deadlines, and they kind of work on those things. So that's possible. But I know some dietitians who are like, I need someone telling me what to do. I don't want to do my own thing and have all these decisions, and I would rather someone else do it. So
you should maybe not consider private practice if, I don't know. That seems, you'd have to be confident and be able to motivate yourself.
Yeah, motivate's a good word.
Stay self-motivated. I mean, you're organized. Like it's almost like a problem for you how organized you are. It's like if you're not organized, you have a problem if things aren't organized.
I do.
See our kitchen. There are some risks. What especially are the risks, and maybe who should consider these risks more than others? Like what's the high risk factor?
So kind of the biggest risk is, the not having the income. So, not making money, not having clients. And this also can depend on your area.
Like having
too.
a bad month or something?
Yeah. And so, everyone might have a bad month in private practice, especially if you're starting out. You might not have a consistent income just yet. And, you kind of have to build things up. So that's where, you might have to consider, is this right for me? And, if you have a family and you have loans or anything like that, to say, what do I maybe need to save? Or some people never really go full time with a practice and they.
So what if you're working? I guess if you're working already at a full-time job and maybe you get into private practice on the side, is that an option? Is that something a lot of people do?
Yeah. And some people start there and some people just stay there. Some people they do kind of like side work, or they'll take on just a couple of clients. That's definitely an option. And it's kind of what I did in terms of like building up my practice on the side, is to, work the full-time job, have the steady income, but kind of do all the other stuff to get myself going with having a practice. So, there's a lot of kind of like things that you could do to get the practice started.
Well, yeah, you started your practice when you were in the middle of pursuing your master's and you were working full-time also. So it's something you can kind of chip away at. That's kind of a luxury if you're already working and you want to do this. It's something that you can chip away at, on nights and weekends or whenever you're not working. It's not like you have to set it up all in one day or something.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
Exactly. And that's, even for people who, maybe don't necessarily have, a job stability right now and they are looking to go into private practice, there's definitely a lot of stuff you can do, and you don't have to have everything set up to really start. So like I mentioned like a website and social media at one point, but you don't need those things really to start.
Well, that's the easy stuff. Like, setting up an Instagram, like that's not hard to do. I don't know why you're starting there. Like,
no, but I mean, that's sometimes people get so overwhelmed with like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this. And then they have this long list of to-dos. And then that's like paralyzing to say like, how do I do all of these things? But it's like the bare bones, kind of getting started, like getting
like your tax ID and like, I guess trying to get approved for insurance.
Yeah. So your tax ID is the key thing. And then your NPI, which is your national provider identifier. And it's literally an online form. We can link it down below.
So yeah, sure. But I mean, those are the things like, you start with the high priority stuff, you chip away at it. You don't have to run out and do 100 things right away. Exactly.
Yeah. And some people actually start with social media. Like they'll be working a full-time job and they just start on Instagram, and then they they do the other stuff like the NPI and the tax ID like we mentioned, but then they maybe start working on their website. And so there's so many little things you could start chipping away at to get yourself
there's
going.
A bare minimum and correct me if I'm wrong, but seriously, like you set yourself up to accept insurance and then you get clients.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's an oversimplification of it.
But I mean, if you do nothing else, that's like the high value stuff.
Yeah. So if you are going to go the insurance route, that's definitely something to start first. And when you do fill out the insurance information, there is a process with that, which is why it's good to kind of chip away at it, because there's a lot involved in terms of like paperwork that you fill out for each individual insurance company, and then the contracting phase.
The Instagram account can wait.
Yes.
I mean, exactly. Like seriously, what?
Yeah.
Start with the insurance company if you can do that.
Yeah.
Have that be the first thing you chip away. You don't even need a website for that.
No. What you need is definitely you need to have your business set up in terms of having a tax ID, your NPI, and then you need to have liability insurance. And then you need to either have a practice address or some kind of
PO box?
Yeah. But it can't be a PO box. It has to be a real street address. So you could still get a PO box, but it'd be a real street address. but you need to have that. Those are kind of like the bare
so
things.
there
you
are
need to have.
obviously some high value things to set up first.
Yes.
And we can go into this in a video or a podcast or something, like how to start a private practice, I guess. But,
Yeah.
you know, there's a small amount of things that are the highest value stuff to start with. If you're working full time, that's the stuff to go for. You know, the things that you should start doing now if you're thinking about setting up that you don't have to leave your job to do.
Yeah. And even like, you know, once you get all the paperwork started for like the insurance, you know, setting up your client forms. So when you do have a client, you have those initial client forms like HIPAA, consent, all that. Again, that's all stuff you can kind of start building from now. So when you do have that client, you have everything ready to go.
So you went full time at one point with your practice a ways back.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that?
So that was back in 2016, I think at this point. I got to a point in my working my full-time job and having the practice where I couldn't do both anymore. And I was kind of feeling like capped out where I was in my position, where I couldn't go any higher at my full-time job. So I couldn't
Shop right.
Yeah. And the job was great, and I loved it as like a first kind of real dietitian job. So many cool things, but there was really no upward motion for me. And so I was kind of feeling
upward mobility.
Yeah, I was kind of feeling stagnant, and I wanted to do different stuff. I didn't want to be locked into like only what was, you know, by corporate. I wanted to be able to do
But there was
things.
a point where you were making enough money to think, well, okay, I could leave the job. You weren't making more with the practice than you were the job, but at a certain point you saw the writing on the wall and you knew the potential for the earning with your practice.
Yeah.
So it was a calculated decision.
It was a calculated decision. I had saved. I had also have a client, like a steady client base. One of my other things was like making sure I had a steady referral system. So I had the insurance companies, but I also had like doctor's offices and a gym that was referring clients to me consistently. And then at that time, I was also doing cooking classes, and I had a contract with them for the following year. And so I kind of had some things lined up, and then I was also getting paid consistently, like billing correctly. And so having all that together, it was like, okay, I can't do both anymore, and this is what I want to do, and I'm ready.
At the same time, you got the business to a point where it looked realistic and you understood it. I mean, you were doing it for a year or two part-time along with your job.
Yeah, and that was key was, was it realistic, but also did I understand it? Because there's so much to kind of learn in the beginning stages, but once you start to understand it, the inner workings, but also like how to get paid and actually getting paid, and then seeing how you can grow. Like I had ideas of how I was going to kind of continue growing and continue getting clients. And I had people who were going to refer me clients, but I couldn't fit anybody in. So that's kind of where it was, I was ready to take the step.
Well, that sounds like another pro for starting a private practice is that it's something that you can ease into. It's something that you can ramp up slowly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I always tell people that. And the only thing to maybe just check on is if you are currently working and you're looking to set up your own practice, just making sure that you're not in any kind of violation of a contract with your role. Some companies actually don't allow
like a
you.
non-compete or something?
Yeah, and some don't allow you to start a practice on the side. But outside of that, you can still start stuff. You could start with social media and not necessarily promote seeing clients, but you
I
could
don't know why you're pushing the social media.
It just keeps coming to mind.
Instagram's not handing you a paycheck.
No,
That's not the thing to do if you're starting a business.
No, but I mean, there's other stuff you could still do.
It's a thing you can do as a tool for networking, but
yes, yeah. Getting the
that's
paperwork.
like a few years down the line that becomes important. That is not the high value thing to go for first.
But the paperwork, there's stuff you could still do without, getting into any issues with your contract. But yeah,
probably anyone listening to this has an Instagram account.
Maybe, I don't know, to be honest. A lot of people actually are using other weird social media stuff.
Or Twitter or Facebook.
Yeah,
I mean, you can just make a new page for your business and call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
I can make a new basket weaving business Facebook page right now. I'm going to do it right now after this is over.
In there?
Yeah, and then I'm going to drop the link in the description. You guys can be all like my basket weaving Facebook page. I'm just saying, like, anyone can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can do that. That's easy.
Yeah.
The hard part is figuring out insurance and like making sure you're good with the government. I mean, another con, you have to pay your own taxes.
Yes.
And like
that's one I didn't
accounting and
mention.
like all that. I don't know if we talked about that or not.
We didn't, but that's a huge thing is, if you're a provider for insurance companies, you're getting paid, but they're not taking taxes out. And the same with any kind of contract work, they're not taking out taxes from your paycheck. So you have to, one, set aside money to be able to pay taxes, whether it's quarterly or every year. So I pay quarterly, like an estimated tax.
The government's going to want their money, and you need to account for that. You get paid, and they're going to come looking for that money.
Exactly. So being able to set aside money each month that you make to account for taxes, but then also filing, taxes. Highly suggest getting an accountant for that.
Yeah, you'll probably need an accountant for that.
Yeah,
I would
tax
assume.
accountant. Absolutely.
So that's just another thing, when you have a job, they do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, rather the government's like, oh, we're just going to take our piece now. Thank you. And that's not what happens when you have your own. I mean, that kind of goes without saying maybe most people aren't earning money that way, but anytime you make money doing something where it's not a company paying you, you generally run into that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else, I don't know if that's a pro or a con. I mean, it's something else to consider. Is there anything else like that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, there's a lot that a company does for you when you work for a company that you end up having to do for yourself. Taxes and accounting is another one of those things. So
yeah, I guess that falls under accounting. I was going to say like paying yourself, like how to pay yourself, but that kind of falls under accounting.
What does that mean?
Like, when you make money, like depending on the business that you set up,
like how you're LLC'd?
Yeah, like do you pay yourself weekly? Do you just take money out as needed? And kind of figuring out the finance
I don't even know
aspect,
what you're talking about right now. What does that even mean?
No, I mean like so you
pay yourself.
Yes.
You get money.
Yes.
It goes to an account.
Yes.
What do you mean pay yourself?
But like pay yourself like a salary to use that money, and what money has to stay in the business to stay for taxes, and what money is yours in terms of to use for other stuff, like whether it's business related or personal.
Are you talking about like how the money's splayed out on paper somewhere?
Yeah. Like how that would.
Because it just hits an account, right?
It does. Yeah. But
like when insurance companies pay you, they send you a check, don't they?
Yes.
And then you deposit that check.
Yes.
All right. So what are you talking about?
I'm talking about like you get paid, and then how do you determine what needs to stay in the business and what, let's say, to pay your rent? Like,
what do you mean stay in the business?
Like stay in the business account, which is, I guess I should mention that.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry. You should definitely get a business account. That should be another step in that beginning stage, which we'll add into, a podcast that we do about
more stuff to do. Very confusing. Lots to learn, but a lot of good upsides as well.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot here. There's a lot you have to learn to get into it. All right. So, day to day, week to week, just give us a quick rundown when you have your private practice and that's what you do full time. What did it look like for you when you were only doing your practice?
So every day was kind of different, but the way I had my schedule before was I would see blocks of clients, generally like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, depending. So that was kind of flexible, but I was actually in the beginning when I first started, I did some virtual stuff, but I did actually a lot of face-to-face. So I used office space at a chamber of commerce, and then I did home visits, and then I did face-to-face fitness groups. So I kind of had all those. But like my day-to-day would be I'd get up, I'd check emails, do all that kind of like back-end stuff, and then I would just go see clients. And so I would have clients usually.
It's a good thing you said you get up, because I would assume you just did all this in your bed. I would have really
I mean, you could, but...
Okay, I get up. Yeah, jeez, you got up today? All right.
Yes, I did.
That's good.
But then I would see clients from like 8 or 9 until like usually 3 or 5 o'clock, depending on the day. So some days I would block clients the whole day, and then other days I would have like gaps in between. And then in between that, I would do like the billing, and I would do the report writing and all of that.
Oh, it's another con when your clients email you at like 8 or 9, or they call you at like 9 o'clock at night. How about that? That's a fun con, right?
Yeah, that's where boundaries come in, though, to be honest.
Setting boundaries, link in the description, card right here. Setting boundaries. That is a video we did.
Mm-hmm.
And boundaries you do need to set.
Yes.
I remember you getting calls.
Yes. And it's hard, especially in the beginning. You want to be there, and then, it's just eating up. And that's where you can end up working a lot and over
50,
40 hours.
60, 70, 80 hours a week. You can work as many hours as you want. It's one of the problems with becoming salaried.
Yeah.
You end up being a slave to your own work ethic at a certain point. How many hours a week do you work, would you say, on your business? When you were full-time with your business, how many hours a week did you work? You didn't work 40. You worked more than 40.
I would say there were some weeks where I was working like 50 or 60 hours where it wasn't all client. And that's the thing, though, is and again, I guess a con is that, your time in terms of you're not getting paid for the time you're working on the business, as in like, billing and, filing stuff and writing reports and doing all that.
Billing was a massive pain for you in the beginning, wasn't it? That was like I remember you having a lot of stuff to deal with that.
Well, it was like not only not understanding billing and like all of these different codes and everything, but then also like if you had a problem, you can't really just call and ask because you call and pro tip, don't call like 30 minutes before the office is closed, because what would end up happening, and I learned this the hard way, was that I would be on hold for so long that by the time I actually got around to speaking to someone, there was one day where like the call was dropped and it was like 4:55, and I'm like,
yeah, well, I mean, I would say that's sort of a general tip there. How did you figure that out? Just calling lots of people for a long time?
So a lot of, kitty. A lot of trial and error for sure. One, I did use, like I mentioned, like the Academy of Nutrition has like a billing guide. That was helpful for understanding what different codes were and what they stood for. So that was a huge thing. The provider website, linked on each of the insurance companies has like a billing guide, and that explains codes, what's acceptable, how to fill out an insurance claim form. So that was a huge thing. And then to be honest, calling the insurance company and asking about benefits. And then I would write all this down. So like I could refer back to it. And then before I knew it, I was like, I understood the language, I guess, of billing, but definitely using a lot of resources together, but saving it because sometimes it's really hard to then find it again.
Oh, you're going back to being organized here.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff to consider, a lot of stuff to do when you start your own business. Anything else you think of that's important?
I mean, one thing I would just say, and this is something I hear, is that, doing it on your own terms, sometimes people don't want to go full-time private practice and that be their whole thing. Sometimes people want to work a part-time job or a full-time job and then have their practice on the side. And it's, again, the beauty of kind of private practice is you can build it however you want, and you could scale it up, scale it down, change in terms of services or programs and kind of pivot, to see what will not only suit your needs, but also, fit the market that you might be serving. So definitely a lot of options.
Yeah, the setup process, it's hard to really illustrate just how much you have to dig and get in the weeds on this stuff. I mean, it was literally months of work for you to set up.
Yeah.
It's no easy feat.
No.
And there's a lot of different things to it. You kind of have to, I think you mentioned that you kind of have to wear a lot of hats. For anyone young who's listening to this right now, who's maybe in high school or undergrad, a lot of this seems like it's sort of mystified.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of an elusive thing that probably feels unachievable to someone who doesn't know the first thing. But you start somewhere, and you just the more you dig into this, the more you learn about it. It's just like anything else where before you start getting into it, it's completely foreign. But as you get used to it and you kind of start to look into things, it starts to make more and more sense. So if you are listening and this is something that you're aspiring to do, I hope you're not off-put by just how complicated it sounds when we're talking about it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot to kind of learn, but it's definitely possible, and it's something hopefully more and more people will talk more openly about in terms of the process that's involved. But yeah, I mean, and one I would guess tip is, I mentioned, I would save a lot of things. I had binders for all different stuff, and that for me, or keeping folders on your desktop, was really helpful in just starting to, again, refer back to the information and have it kind of all in one place. So then that way, as you're kind of like, if you're struggling through billing, if you're struggling through setting up the business, which just the back end business, like learning general business, check out like your local business association. They have like free resources, and we can link a couple in the description of just free information about business, how to get started, and that kind of thing that could be helpful.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's an uphill battle. You'll have to learn a lot of things that you've never learned about before, and it'll be many hours of some hours of running in circles.
Yes,
a little bit, some wasted time. You gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet, right? Any closing thoughts or words of advice for aspiring RDs to be in private practice?
Get started. You can just start now. So get started, but create a list of all the things that you might need to do for private practice. And then, like we said, prioritize, start with what absolutely needs to get done first and just kind of like chunk away at it, because it can seem pretty overwhelming and like a lot to do, of how to figure out all different kinds of stuff. And, that I would say is kind of like a starting point, and then ask for help and support, whether it's not only with other dietitians, like joining, free groups, Facebook groups, and just kind of being around other dietitians who are doing the same thing, but also can lend, some expertise and maybe cut to the chase with some things versus trying to figure it out on your own. Such valuable resources. So, tap into those, and, don't be afraid to ask for help in these beginning stages, especially when you're, kind of looking at all this stuff.
Probably not a resource you used much, but Reddit has a lot of subreddits that are dedicated to small business, entrepreneurship, or, even dietetics. Yeah. There's a lot of subreddits. I'm a fan of Reddit. Not everyone is.
Yeah, especially for the business aspect, because again, undergrad, unless you have a program that was specifically designed for that, my undergrad didn't talk anything about business or private practice really. So being able to just kind of learn business and what, again, it doesn't have to be this deep dive, but just to know what kinds of basic marketing, basic accounting things could be
marketing,
really helpful.
Accounting, management, even if you're one person, just knowing the process of like a pattern of management, knowing what that even is. Yeah. Stuff like that. Yeah. If you've never taken a business class, those are probably the three big ones. And then like leadership.
That's a good one.
General leadership skills too. Because you would need that for both, like keeping yourself on task and then working with other people, and then obviously leading clients and whatnot. But a lot of the skills, I think, with running your practice come from being a good, not less coworker, but more, when you're in business and you work with other businesses, learning how to be professional. So like business communication is a big one.
That's a huge one. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like that's something that is not emphasized, and how to communicate in a professional setting, but also through email and phone call, like what's appropriate, in terms of like how to word things, again, without also burning bridges. So if you want to terminate a contract, like how do you do that nicely and
tactfully?
Tactfully is a good word. So
there's a lot to that. There's all this stuff that you take it for granted when you're a business student, that's like, you guys, you don't pick any of that up. So if you're an undergrad still and you're thinking about this, maybe consider taking some business courses as electives if it's available to you. I know business communication was really valuable to me, because when I got my first management job, I wouldn't have known like what an email signature was. There's all this stuff that they don't teach you unless you actually go out of your way to learn it. Yeah. So when you start a private practice, you have to, you're not just a dietitian at that point. You're an entrepreneur. You are a business person at that point. It sounds, I don't know, it sounds kind of wishy-washy, I guess, but there's a lot that comes with being involved in a business. There's a lot of parallels to management, where it's like, you guys, you're your own manager. You're the manager of your company. You're like the CEO, I guess. You are technically in a position where you're going to have to deal with a lot of that stuff. You're going to have to learn how to work with people and understand that other companies have limitations. Then you're going to have to learn how to be tactful and patient, like you said, with not burning bridges. There's a lot there that involves soft skills and professionalism that is not apparent if you have a technical expertise like dietetics. It's a whole other skill set you have to pick up if you become an entrepreneur and you run a small business.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other, if you're not able to like take a course if you're in undergrad right now, or even kind of whatever your situation is, check out if you have like a free library, or the free library was really actually good for not only learning about marketing, but like they had a whole business resource center and like free information on the website, but free webinars and all that kind of stuff. So checking out those kinds of resources can sometimes be really helpful if you're maybe not able to, jump into like a college level course. But yeah.
Are there any books that you would recommend to someone who was looking to get started that were helpful for motivating you or kind of acclimating you to the business world? Tough question. I'm putting you on the spot here. There are, while you're ruminating, there are a lot of authors who specialize in writing these kinds of books. Tim Ferriss has been a big one for me with business and leadership. Even the old school stuff like 7 Habits for Highly Effective People and the Peter Principle is another one, old school, but there's a lot of business books. Who Moved My Cheese is one that I always talk about. Yeah. Because it's just, it's sort of a general analogy for life, but it's so relevant for business with, change.
Yeah.
And acclimating to change.
Yeah. There was a book I read called The Pumpkin Plan, which I think that's what it's called. I'll look it up. But it was about your service or your product, that growing the biggest pumpkin on the pumpkin patch to stand out. And so that was a really cool concept in terms of marketing. I mentioned the Academy, but the Academy has a book called Private Practice and Beyond, and it was all about starting a private practice and
the Academy
of Nutrition and Dietetics. Sorry.
Cool.
They have a book called, I think it's Building Your Private Practice and Beyond, and it was a really good resource of just talking about the basics of private practice, not in terms of insurance, but just like the setup, some forms to have. And so that was a good, just to kind of know, I need to do this, this, and this. That was a good starting.
Just be careful if you get into reading books about like business and leadership and entrepreneurship, because it's really easy to read 1,000 books and never actually start.
That's a good point.
It's a trap.
Yes. I get into that sometimes, right?
Oh, it's so easy. Because you feel like you're being productive when you're reading a book or you're studying something or you're listening to something. It feels like you're being productive when there's a lot more you could do to be productive rather than reading more books.
It's funny because this is kind of, if you watched or listened to the other podcast on the TTM trans-theoretical model, we talked about the preparation stage. And that's honestly where you can get stuck in preparation. It's the same way the clients get stuck in preparation and making sure everything's perfect or learning all the things. And the same thing can happen with, starting a private practice as you get stuck in this like preparing and planning and making sure everything's right and not actually doing anything. So.
Yeah, there are certain things that sort of apply across the board with life in general. And this is one of those things where you should, the best thing to do is start. The first thing you can do.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yes.
Do it. All right. Wow. We've gone for a while about private practice, pros and cons, why you should start one. What do you even do? And, I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Pretty well here. I guess we have some notes here. So when did you quit your job? When to quit? Like why? What really gave it away for you? I don't know if we talked about it or not.
We did. And some of the key highlights just for me were, getting to a point where I had a steady income from the business. It wasn't what I was making in the full-time job. Steady client base, a referral base. I understood the business. I had things set up where I knew what I was doing, what my next step would look like in the business to grow. And I reached the point where I couldn't do more being in the full-time job.
Yeah, we did talk about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Well, I think, we went for a while here. Any closing thoughts?
Closing thought, to be honest, is really, get started. Just get started. I think that's the biggest thing, and ask for help along the way, and partner with other dietitians in terms of, have maybe like a little mentor group that you like chat with every once in a while. Just how are things going, and just to be able to like have support has been really helpful. So that's
cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been my RD journey with Peraza Nutrition.
Yes.
Felicia Peraza of Peraza Nutrition LLC, Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, all the things, Peraza Nutrition and My RD Journey. All the links to the socials will be in the description. Do check those out. Lots of good content coming your way on all of those platforms. I guess that'll do it for us here. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for listening.